So she gets the witness to admit to murder. I'm pretty sure that doesn't happen all that often on the witness stand here in the United States. Legally Blonde. So for those of you that have seen it, Legally Blonde actually has some pretty cool movie scenes in there about the courtroom. It's definitely a little cheesy and maybe not exactly what you'd see in the courtroom, but some of it's accurate. So let's take a look.
Miss Wyndham, what had you done earlier that day?
I got up, got a latte, went to the gym, got a perm, and came home.
Well, you got in the shower?
I believe the witness has made it clear that she was in the shower.
Yes, Your Honor. Miss Wyndham, had you ever gotten a perm before?
Yes.
How many would you say?
2 a year since I was 12.
So before we get into the scene, this character being played by Reese Witherspoon is actually a law student. She's going to Harvard Law School. And you might be asking yourself, well, how is she in a courtroom? How is she acting as an attorney? Is that allowed? Well, in fact, it is. In fact, when I was in law school, I participated in a legal clinic through my law school at Boston University. And this is exactly what I did. I represented indigent clients, but here's the kicker. You have to be supervised by a licensed attorney. Okay, and that licensed attorney who's doing that supervision is 100% responsible for everything that student attorney does. Meaning if the student attorney makes a mistake, student attorney commits malpractice, it's going on to the license of that supervising attorney. It's a tough job because quite frankly in law school, a lot of law students don't necessarily know what they're doing. These supervising attorneys that take on this responsibility, it's a big deal and there's a lot of risk there. And so they watch very, very closely. It'd be relatively rare that you would see a law student defending someone on a murder charge. But it's Hollywood, so they're gonna get away with it. Let's see what happens in this scene.
You do the math.
You know, a girl in my sorority, Tracy Marcinko, got a perm once. We all tried to talk her out of it. Curls weren't a good look for her.
Okay, so what she just did there, just kind of randomly talking to the jury, she's probably gonna get shut down on that by the judge. Now, every judge runs their courtroom a little differently, but when you have a witness on the stand, generally what you're supposed to do, ask a question and then get the answer, okay? Now, does that mean that lawyers aren't going to take some liberties? Does that mean that lawyers aren't going to try to get what they want in front of that jury? Of course they're going to try. But if this was a regular courtroom, pretty sure the judge would have shut her down and say, you know, time to address the witness, let's ask questions, not speak to the jury.
She didn't have your bone structure. Oh. But thankfully, that same day, she entered the Beta Delta Pi wet t-shirt contest where she was completely hosed down from head to toe.
Objection. Why is this relevant?
Oh, I have a point, I promise.
So we finally see an objection from the prosecutor. It's a relevancy objection. Now, what does that mean? Well, she's saying whatever this is she's talking about just doesn't matter to the case, and she's asking the judge to go ahead and get things moving along. What she also should have done is say, hey, let's ask the witness a question, not have you given speeches.
Then make it.
Yes. Chutney, why is it that Tracy Marcinko's curls were ruined when she got hosed down?
Because they got wet?
Exactly. Because isn't it the first cardinal rule of perm maintenance that you're forbidden to wet your hair for at least 24 hours after getting a perm at the risk of deactivating the ammonium thioglycolate?
Yes.
And wouldn't somebody who's had, say, 30 perms before in their life be well aware of this rule? And if, in fact, you weren't washing your hair, as I suspect you weren't because your curls are still intact, wouldn't you have heard the gunshot? And if, in fact, you had heard the gunshot, Brooke Wyndham wouldn't have had time to hide the gun before you got downstairs, which would mean that you would have had to have found Mrs. Wyndham with a gun in her hand to make your story plausible. Isn't that right?
She's my age. Did she tell you that? How would you feel if your father married someone who was your age?
You, however, had time to hide the gun, didn't you, Chutney? After you shot your father.
I didn't mean to shoot him. I thought it was you walking through the door.
So she gets the witness to admit to murder. I'm pretty sure that doesn't happen all that often on the witness stand here in the United States. It's all Hollywooded up. A couple other things, though, about this scene. One is you notice what Reese is wearing. You know, this bright pink kind of dress. That's probably not what you're going to see most often in the courtroom. You're going to see a more conservative attire, showing that decorum to the court. But again, this is kind of part of the movie. And then another thing that's really interesting here, though, is that she understands perms and that you can't get your hair wet. And this gal on the stand still has the curls, and so she kind of figures all this out. But it really highlights a really important point for lawyers. It's knowing the details of your case. Knowing all the ins and outs, because quite frankly, if I was examining that witness, I don't know much about perms, I wouldn't have figured it out. And so it just goes to show how critically important it is when you're practicing as a lawyer to know everything you can about the details of your case. Great scene, great movie, hope you enjoyed it.